It's rough, gritty, and filled with rage. Deathcore personified, for better or for worse. Welcome to A Reno Does Music, where today we're doing another commission from my boy Eduardo. This is the fourth studio album from the deathcore band Thy Art Is Murder called Dear Desolation. This is actually the album I got into the band with, having discovered Thy Art along with a lot of other deathcore bands really late in the game, and it initially had me addicted without hesitation. CJ McMahon, despite his current opinions, is a recognizable voice among a lot of samey vocalists in that scene outside of the Big Four, which at this point I heavily believe the band is a part of, and I can't talk today. I believe the band is a part of the Big Four even now after the release of the recent album Godlike. The band overall has always been able to back things up with the consistency, but I feel like even nowadays they still are doing so, making the case back then, and especially now that they are, again, a part of the Big Four. I said the sentence correctly this time. The band has gone through a few lineup changes over the years, but the stretch between Holy War and Dear Desolation has, now that I've listened to their entire catalog casually, stands as my personal favorite moments from the band in a live capacity, looking at their performances and even their studio performances on albums. Without further ado, and hopefully with less stuttering, let's get into the good and the not so good about Dear Desolation. Anticipation is a big piece of any deathcore puzzle, whether it's the build-up or wondering what comes next, and Thy Art has mastered it with little to no issue at this stage, as is evident by the early track, The Son of Misery. As is the case with most of this album, it's non-stop fury, halted only by a brief moment to breathe before you're suffocated under chug-heavy guitar courtesy of Andy Marsh and Sean DeLander. Consistency to me is a key element in determining whether you're just okay or great at what you do within music as a whole, and that's doubled down when it comes to a genre like deathcore, where sameness is the usual formula to take in a song outside of the solo or specific vocal moments. Admittedly, outside of breakdowns or specific parts of a song, a lot of instrumental pieces in deathcore sound the same, especially within certain eras within the genre, such as the early 2010s deathcore, or even the current era, being roughly the last 4 years. But both Andy and Sean managed to make consistency work, not just in this song, but the album overall. Just a couple tracks after this is the title track for Dear Desolation, nice and heavy with an easy to follow progression, repetition, and sectional approach, which just goes to show off more of their ability to work through their own version of deathcore with precision. Staying on the topic of consistency, this album was the last to feature Lee Stanton on drums, before he would go on to leave the band due to personal things in his life, and his drumming has been nothing short of spotlight worthy. Yeah, you can say the vocalist of a deathcore band makes up the meat and potatoes, and the leading man CJ McMahon has girth to his voice, but for me, it was Lee here on this album and a lot of the songs, more so over other band members, that caught my attention from the early work in Infinite Death, all the way up to this here on Dear Desolation. Something about that pace he keeps in songs like Death Dealer, in the chorus specifically, just speaks to me and keeps my attention like nothing else. Oddly enough as well, it's in deeper cuts and non-single songs that he really excels in his work, whereas in tracks like the opener Slaves Beyond Death, there's still an obvious amount of power going in and it sounds great, but it's just not as great as, again, those deep cuts, those dark horse tracks. Personally, I think a band is only as good as its most underrated and deep cuts in terms of their musical quality, so if there's at least one member putting in the work outside of singles on more notable tracks, or just, again, those deeper cuts, it makes it worth listening to, and it makes it more enjoyable, and Lee here is just doing that in a very well done way. I do have to say that the one piece of the band, the one member of the band, that while I did find it, of course, in multiple parts of the band, and it was enjoyable, as every member of the band was, the bass didn't really jump out to me or speak to me in any real large way. It was good, but I couldn't really find a part that was like, yeah, bass. But you could also say that about deathcore in general. Unless you have a very specific version of deathcore that relies on the bass, especially like a certain distorted kind of bass, you're kind of left being as like the stage filler, not in a negative way, just like that was the first word that came to mind. Before I end the review though, I want to talk about the overall album performance from CJ McMahon, who I touched on briefly. I believe Dear Desolation is the best he's put out in terms of vocal presence, power, and overall performance up until this point. If I had to rank the Artist Murder albums up to this point, I'd go The Adversary, Holy War, and end with Hate and Dear Desolation tied for different respects, with the vocals very much overtaking Hate's. Maybe it's down to the fact that this is a couple albums further into the career of a band, so there's more polish in the process, but there's undeniably more to dissect and enjoy here on this LP. I'm a big fan of animal-sounding, sheer grunting deathcore until the day I die, but the pronunciation and overall change in CJ's screaming from then until now is noticeably better. Dear Desolation is a contender for one of the most underrated releases of the last decade, purely for being outdone by more hype-driven pieces such as Flesh Coffin from Lorna Shore or Returns to Nothingness by the same band. Missing the mark for being a top album only for extreme examples of pure poetic perfection within the genre from other bands such as those noted tracks, again, it is, without a doubt, just underrated and fantastic. I found that the formula the band has gone to the well for time after time has increased in both complexity and precision over the course of their albums, and going beyond this album's release, I think it just barely falls flat of my personal favorite album of theirs. With my personal favorite being Human Target, but we'll talk about Human Target another day. For these reasons, Dear Desolation by The Artist Murder gets an 8.2 out of 10, and that's your review. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you're staying hydrated. Tell me about your favorite deathcore album down in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time.